Hello and welcome to Chairside Live. I'm your host, Megan Strong. Thanks for joining us today. You're in for a treat because Gary the lawyer is back to talk with me about a very important topic, the non-compete clause, also known as the covenant not to compete. What exactly are they and why do you need to be well versed in them? Gary shares all his legal knowledge on this complex provision found in many agreements. Let's get into it. Hello everyone and welcome in. We're here today with Gary the lawyer, who is the in-house legal counsel for Glidewell Laboratories, and as you know, the host of the Gary the Lawyer segment. So he's here today and we're talking about something very exciting, non-compete agreements, which is a great topic, but you really should know about it. So we're going to dive right in. When we talk about non-compete agreements, what are we talking about?
Well, you're likely to see this kind of agreement in a purchase agreement if you're going to purchase a dental practice or if you're going to go to work for somebody else that has an established dental practice.
Sure.
And as the name suggests, right, it's to keep you from competing against them.
Okay.
And it's one of a set of agreements that we call, or provisions in an agreement, that we call restrictive covenants.
Okay.
That's a legal term.
Yes,
and
very legal.
And it restricts you from doing certain things.
Sure.
And so the non-compete agreement would say, okay, you're restricted from competing against me if you go out on your own, or if I'm buying your practice, you can't then set up another practice next door and start it all over again and compete against me. So these are restrictive covenants. There's also what we call a non-solicitation agreement.
Okay, what's that?
That can be a part of one of these purchase agreements or employment agreements also, and that is so that you don't solicit or ask patients to come with you when you leave that practice.
Right. So if the patients like me better than you, and I take them with me.
Right. That would be that'd be an example.
Okay.
or employees.
Okay.
So let's say you're going and you have the best dental hygienist, and you say, oh, I'm going to start my own thing. I want to take you with me. Will you come with me if I leave? And so that keeps you from doing that, prohibits you from doing that. Gotcha.
Okay. So can you give us an example then of how this would play out in a scenario?
Yeah. Let's take Megan Strong, graduating from dental school.
From dental school, right. Which one?
You're new. What's the most prestigious?
I don't know.
School?
USC
okay.
just sounds good, so we'll go with that.
That's good. Let's do that.
Okay.
And so you're graduating from dental school. Mm-hmm. I'm a small country practitioner.
Are you?
Right. I've been doing this for a while.
Okay.
I've been doing the dental thing for a while. You'd like to come back home and set up practice in that same town, right?
Let's say we're in Georgia, I think.
Okay, right. Okay. That's what we're just about in Georgia.
Right.
And so,
give me some sweet tea.
Yeah, you're right. So your plan is to work for me for 3 years, mm-hmm. and then you will you'll cozy up to all of my patients. You will cozy up to my dental hygienist, which is the only one in town, mm-hmm. And then you will move across the street from me. And you will send out handwritten notes to everyone, all the patients, and say, I've just opened my own, proud to announce, and I've got all shiny new equipment, mm-hmm. and I'm ready to see patients now. Right. And you're going to try to steal all of my patients from me, right? I've got like 10 years left before retirement. Mm-hmm. I'm looking to spend some time with the grandkids.
Right.
Right. And
maybe pick up golf. We'll
see.
See.
Yeah, probably not. but maybe.
Maybe sit on the porch with that sweet tea.
Right. That's about right.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that you don't do that to me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come on board, I ask you to sign a non-compete agreement, as part of the regular employment agreement, and a non-solicitation agreement, so that you don't solicit any of my patients.
And should I sign this?
Well, you shouldn't sign my agreement, Megan, because my agreement will have it so that you can't compete against me anywhere in the state of Georgia or any of the contiguous states, right? And then you can't open any practice there,
right?
And you can't hire ever any of my employees, and you can't ever see any of my patients as my patients.
Wow.
As your patients. So yeah, so don't.
That's pretty strict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what should you do in that situation?
Yeah. What should we do?
Well, you should try to negotiate with me, right? So what you would ask for was, hey, let's look at these agreements, and let's what we do with covenant not to compete is to alter them in geographic location and by time. So you want to say, okay, I'll agree not to compete with you in a 6-mile radius of you. Mm-hmm. I won't set up a shop within a 6-mile radius, and I won't directly solicit any of your employees.
Sure. But if they willingly say, hey, I see you opened up shop and I want to work for you, does that?
Okay, that's a good, so the agreement can be written both ways. I can say you can never hire one of my employees, but you would want to negotiate, but if they come to me and I don't directly solicit them and they want to come work for me, I'm still going to be able to hire them.
Sure.
Right? So I think the thing to know about these agreements it's all negotiable.
Okay.
Right. So you're not going to be locked into any specific, and also know that courts are generally disfavor these non-compete agreements because what it does, it restricts trade. It restricts you from being able to set up your profession.
Sure.
It's going to take away your livelihood, right? Your family is going to suffer. If you've got to move 3 states away, you may not be able to set up a practice over there.
Sure. Gotcha.
So courts will really disfavor these type of agreements and will narrowly construe them.
And do I need a lawyer when I'm negotiating these agreements? And
you're asking a lawyer.
Right.
You need a lawyer.
Yes, of course you do. Hire me.
You need a very expensive lawyer. No,
sure.
and actually you should not go this alone. This is not a place for forms or getting something off the internet. These are very state-specific agreements.
Okay.
So it's not going to be just something that you can go by, and you'll also want to know what's kind of customary in your location. So there's some states actually where it says a 1-year non-compete within a 6-mile radius is presumptively valid.
Sure.
And you'll want to know if there's any presumptions in your state.
Okay.
But a lot of times it's just going to go by localities. If you're in a really busy downtown area, maybe a mile away is far enough away.
Sure.
If you're out in the country someplace,
right.
maybe the county line.
Sure, sure. And can any of these restrictive covenants be overly broad?
Yes, yeah, and that's what courts will try to restrict.
Okay.
So they'll want to say, okay, well, this is going to last for 30 years, that you can't compete against me,
sure.
or 10 years until I retire, right?
Right.
But you want to argue that's overbroad, and you want to get that reeled back in. And courts will generally they will say, this needs to be construed reasonably.
Right.
Also, let me add that there are states such as California and New York that don't allow non-compete agreements whatsoever.
Oh.
Yeah, so you're good to go. Now, the exception there is if I'm buying your practice.
Okay.
So if I'm buying your practice, I can enter into a non-compete agreement then, where you don't set right back up next to me.
Gotcha.
And so that's okay in California. But in California, typically you can't restrain somebody's trade and inhibit them from performing their profession.
Sure. And let's talk a little bit about, if you will, how I can negotiate your restriction on me not soliciting your employees, or like the hygienist or your patients.
Right, and again, courts are going to be disfavorable in looking at these, but not so much as the non-compete agreement. So they're going to generally allow, if it says you're not supposed to hire somebody, that you're not supposed to hire somebody. Now, when you get into smaller situations, that can change. So if I've got the only hygienist in town,
right.
that's probably not going to be valid.
Sure.
There's been a couple big cases recently, actually, where like Microsoft and Google and a bunch of those big companies had entered into non-solicitation agreements amongst themselves, so that they wouldn't solicit the employees of each other's employees.
Wow.
So the courts found that was anti-competitive and kept the wages down in that area for these are IT professionals.
Sure.
Yeah. And so they found that was wrong, and they actually got hit with some big monetary awards.
Right, and it looks like there was no non-compete agreement with Verizon and Sprint, because the Verizon, can you hear me now, guy, is now working for Sprint.
Did you see that?
I
just saw that. Very good example.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now there's no federal law on this, but the federal law that has been proposed is to keep low-level employees totally out of this. Let me give you an example. Jimmy John's, the sandwich place. Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
they have a non-compete agreement. So if you work for Jimmy John's and you're a sandwich maker, like they have you sign something that you can't go work for Subway.
Really?
Yeah. So it's that serious.
All right. So let's summarize today. Yeah. What's the takeaway for our dentist?
Well, I think the big thing is this is very serious. These agreements, this can keep you from practicing your profession, right?
There's a fly. Sorry. Go ahead.
These are very serious agreements. They can keep you from practicing your profession. So you want to be able, you want to know when one is in an agreement that you're going to sign.
Yes.
So I know a lot of times people, you're trusting, you're coming back to your hometown of Georgia. You've known me forever. I did your teeth when you grew up.
Yeah.
You're going to take over my practice. We're all all feeling good. Here, sign this agreement. You're going to want to read that agreement.
Yes.
And you're really, if it's got a non-compete agreement or a non-solicitation provision in there, you're going to really want to get a lawyer to review that.
Yes.
Because it's going to make a lot of difference. It can keep you from practicing, right, if something goes south.
Absolutely.
If I sell to somebody else,
sure,
and you still got this non-compete agreement with the business, you're in trouble, right? You're not going to buy the business. So there's that to worry about. So read, and this goes in general. Read every agreement.
Right.
Right. So and make sure you're comfortable.
Front and back, cover to cover.
Make sure you're
word
comfortable
by word.
before going forward.
Sure.
Right.
Great.
And again, this is not a place for forms. This isn't something that you should get off the internet and take a look at. This is one of those where you're going to have to lay out some money for an experienced lawyer to take a look at it and advise you correctly. Preferably somebody that's done this kind of work before.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, and so also know that that these agreements are disfavored by the court.
Sure.
So if you're sitting there and you're reading your agreement and thinking, okay, well, it's time for me to go, but I've entered into a 30-year agreement with Mr. Pritchard to work at his practice and I can't compete with him, know that you may not be bound by that, right? Know that the courts disfavor this, and you can go and probably go see a lawyer and get that modified so that you can get out of it with time served.
Sure, right.
So keep that in mind. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I've got to stick by this agreement, courts will what's called blue pencil these agreements and modify them.
Nice.
Or the other option is to just throw it out altogether. They can throw out the agreement. So get yourself a good lawyer, ask them what's going on, see if you've entered into something that's overly broad. It's one of those few times when the courts will save you, even if you're too have read it too hurriedly to save yourself, right?
Right.
Or things change.
Sure. Awesome. Gary, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show today to talk about this important topic. And if you have any questions for Gary, you can always write in at chairside@glidewelldental.com. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of Chairside Live. On behalf of myself and everyone here at Glidewell Laboratories, thank you for watching, and I'll meet you right back here next time.